Vanakkam, Namaste and blessings to everyone. This is Dr. Bhairavi Balasubramanian PhD, the Sky Priestess. Today we are seeing Venus conjunct Pluto in Capricorn. We are also seeing Mercury in Pisces squaring Jupiter in Sagittarius. The article gives you a bit more intel on some of the steps that you can take and some of the opportunities that you have with these alignments. But there's also something that I wanted to speak to that I'm not wanting to address in a written form right now, simply because I don't think I have the right words or the time to put it in the way that it needs to. But effectively, this is a day where we're going to be facing a lot of old wounds. And some of these wounds come from our lives, some of them come from past lives, some of them come from the imprints of systemic, economic, societal oppression that also have got to do with how different cultures have face the effects of colonization. And I'm not just talking about the use of natural resources, but also colonization of mind, of indigenous cultures, the loss of language, the loss of land. This is the kind of day where a lot of those older wounds can come up. And it's a very tricky subject because when we talk about culture, we also talk about the events that have shaped that culture. We also talk about the ways in which that culture has responded to events that have drastically shaped it. And that is what that memory of trauma is about. So it's really that delicate line between recognizing these triggers and the memory of the ancestors that were also subjected to them. And it is also about looking at that and yet saying that it is finally okay to let go of that energetic signature of pain and oppression and suffering and woundedness. Now, this is something that's a bit controversial to say only because people will take it and twist it in whatever ways they want to. So to each and every one of you, especially those of you who are working through or see the process of decolonizing the mind and decolonizing the spiritual paradigm and really looking back at indigenous practices as part of your spiritual practice, look at these questions. Allow yourself to see how much of that connection and honoring of memory actually creates back doors in you to replay or take back in traumatic patterns that you no longer need to experience. For people who come from cultures who are very, very, very strongly connected to land, sometimes the act of letting go of those memories or letting go of the patterns, I should say, rather than the memory, the act of letting go of those patterns can sometimes feel like you're betraying your culture. And as someone from that kind of a background, I can tell you those are questions that I've certainly been grappling with for the past few years, and there isn't an easy answer. So there is this very delicate balance between recognizing the roots of trauma and at the same time realizing that your cultural identity is not necessarily or does not need to be defined by the presence of that trauma. It can be a history that you move from and evolve from, whilst honoring the land and the ancestors and the experiences that made it possible for you to be in this place today. And this is certainly, again, a much more delicate conversation than I have time to hold space for right now. So that's what's coming up with the Venus-Pluto alignment. Please be mindful, especially if you're having conversations with indigenous practitioners or people who simply come from a different culture and who might feel as though their voices are not being heard. This is a very good time to put aside what we think trauma is about, what we think ancestry, memory, and race is about, and to actually listen with our hearts, because that act of listening can actually go a long way in healing those wounds. Now, sometimes people hold on to trauma for other reasons, and that's not something that we can go around fixing. In those cases, you've just got to respect that people are in their own process and they are on the journey that they are on, and you don't need to engage in it. But again, this does come down to discernment. Sometimes we try to turn away from the difficult conversations because they're difficult. And sometimes there are cases in which we need to walk away from them simply because they're feeding into yet another cycle or yet another part of the drama triangle. So these are, again, decisions that you need to make. I'm sure this energy would have been building up for a little while. It's certainly at its peak right now, and it's still going to be in the skies for a few more days. With the Mercury and Jupiter square, let's just say our bullshit detectors need to be high, but so too do our projection detectors. We need to be very mindful if what we are seeing and perceiving is actually what is there, or if we are responding to triggers that have more to do with us than the message that we're actually receiving. Because Venus is conjunct Pluto right now, there's so much of possibilities for creation, transmutation, but equally destruction. So whatever you do, read the article, take a little bit of time to respond before you go and create yet another response, or you go and create perhaps something completely different to the nature of the situation or the nature of the trigger that you're facing. Well, I gotta go right now. Take care, lots of love, and just be extra mindful about what you put your energy into right now. Cha-cha for now. Bye-bye.